Took a wee bit longer, just it was a really nice cup of coffee and time to have a yarn. So here we go again. Far away, please, Pete.
Thank you, Your Worship, and welcome back. So just on the Arts Centre, we did have a bit of a discussion. We've got sort of the framework of something we can shape up and bring back on Thursday for the Arts Centre. Yes, because we said we'd come back after the break. We've looked at it, but we just need to give it a little more rigour and form, so we'll be back on Thursday with that. The events ecosystem. Now, what we thought would be quite useful is if we were able to share with you, give some insight into what actually gets funded for events across the various sort of organisations and where that money is going. So look, in total, if I start at the bottom, there's just on 15 million is given out, and you can see it there, the recreation, sport and event per annum, and I'll just use the 24-25 column, 630, Christchurch NZ 520, events funding administered and delivered by the council itself 3.42, the Christchurch NZ 600 out of the Capital Endowment Fund. Venues Otatahi gets really three lots, and I'll explain it. It gets an operational or management services grant of 3.25, capital grant of 4.65, and that subvention credit payment down the bottom of 2 million. And we've put that in there because events is its business. So that is the sort of a bit of a one page of what is funding events, but there may be some questions, Your Worship, which we can.
Yeah, we've got Sarah, then Victoria.
Thanks so much. I guess the one thing that I can't see here is what the current level of funding is, just the future stuff that's in the LTP. It would have just been quite useful.
All right.
And if I had it earlier, I'd have asked ahead of time,
yes,
kind of thing,
right,
to have a FY 23-24 for comparison, because there's been the concerns about cuts to funding, if you like. So it's about,
yes,
about the difference rather than necessarily the volume.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I've got a question that's come through that I need to respond to, Sarah, which clarifies exactly that in terms of how much, so I'll do that.
Okay, Victoria, please.
Thank you, Sarah. That was one of the questions I was going to ask. The second one I've got is around VO. I understand the capital grant because we own the assets and the buildings.
No.
But I'm less certain about the management services grant. I thought this was an organisation that could clean its own face.
Just to clarify, they do own the facilities. VO own the facilities that they operate.
Okay. They own the facilities. So that aside, facilities aside, and capital grant aside, why is there a management services grant? I thought they were operating within their own fiscal envelope. Why are we propping that up?
No, they've as long as I can remember, they have not operated. They've always been subsidised, and they have been subsidised through that subvention credit payment and also through that sort of rate funded services grant. They have had a target to try and get to back to break even, but they haven't managed to do that yet.
So what is that target? What does it look like, and when are they meant to be breaking even by, please?
I don't know that.
Have they made any progress?
I don't know that either. So I don't know the figures, but we can look back. They used to be in-house for a period, and then they went back out. So they've had a disrupted period post-earthquake.
Earthquake and COVID.
Any more questions? Yanni, please.
Yeah, just the turf. Are we like, have we thought about offsetting the cost from the turf with like a turf levy on a ticket?
Money off them.
Maybe to help recover some of the costs.
the event out of the 15 frickin' million they get.
They would, so
Sorry, Andrew.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah,
Nothing has been included in the fee schedule for that in this LTP.
Right. So the turf farm that we're buying, or the land, or what's the total cost of that?
That we're not buying land. It'll be long term. It'll be done on existing council land, so there's no land purchase as such. Those costs are based on the business case estimate of how many events they will host in the cut down mode, where it is possible that there could be damage to the turf.
Yeah.
The reality is, once we learn how it operates, that may well reduce.
Right. Okay.
We're protecting ourselves essentially.
Cool.
Just for clarity's purposes, I was interested in that Te Kai turf bit being this in the events funding picture. Does this come out of an events pot or budget, or does this come out of parks operational?
Sorry, which bit are you talking
Te
about?
Kai turf, that line.
That will sit in the parks budget.
Okay,
The turf,
but it supports events. That's why it's
the
in this.
services associated to turf for Te Kaha will be delivered by the parks unit, as they are now for Apollo Stadium.
Okay.
great answer. Samuel?
Yeah, just around the subvention credit payment. What is that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's the way they've calculated their tax. They incur the liability on their balance sheet, so there's a commitment to pay that deferred tax. So they have an arrangement with council that the subvention credit actually goes back to them.
So does that mean that so just so I'm clear with VO, the management service agreement is the subsidy for running VO, but the capital grant is the cost of repairing the buildings and things like that?
That's correct. The
Yeah.
capital grant is, yes, that's
So
right.
the 2 mil subvention credit, what is that used for?
In the past, it's been used to repay loan that council's given
Oh,
to
right,
VOs.
okay.
Yep.
Oh, so is this part of that one we structured a year or two ago? Is it that one to pay down the Lancaster Park? Yeah. Okay, cool. No, that's great. Well, yeah. Okay.
It's not really part of the events.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just
Yeah. Okay.
Andre and then Aaron.
they don't all.
Thank you. Just to assist with Councillor Templeton's question, the way I'm reading this is, so the advice we had was funding of 2 million was included in the last annual plan for the event ecosystem. What I'm seeing here is 520, second from the top, then 600 further down for event ecosystem funding. So that to me would suggest an effective $900,000 cut on previous years. Is that about right?
Nige might have more accurate position. No, this financial year has a lump sum for the ecosystem in this year.
So
One
can you
year.
point us to where?
It's not on. That's in this current financial year. Nige, do you know the number? It's about 1 point. The ecosystem funding.
For the 1 year
It's
funding.
printed in the plan. I can find it.
So what was provided to us in February was funding of 2.05 million was
Nigel will be able
included.
to answer.
Nigel's got it. Right.
Yeah, so it's not on the board, but there's $1.9 million that's currently on budget. I think what
That's fine.
to go through for the entire thing. Yeah,
So this year it was 1.9,
And for one-off.
one-off year.
Okay. So that's an effective cut of 800,000 on the previous year. So what we've got this year is 1.9, and what I'm seeing here is 600 plus 520.
no, I think in terms of what we need to go back to the early ones, which talks about the money that was added to the budget as a one-off in last year's annual plan, and this is reverting back to the position prior to that. And I think that's part of Councillor Templeton's question before about what was on last year's budget, so we can work out what was increased for that one-off year and where it is now.
In which
So I need
case,
to provide
having the 2
table
years
for.
then, if we've just had a one-off year, it would be good to know what was the previous year, so our normal state. Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, I'm getting a bit confused. So 2 years ago it was more or less this, and then last year we had a lump.
Of 1.9.
The previous year before the lump was very similar to this.
Thank you.
So Christchurch NZ have been receiving about 520 and 600 year on year, except this year where they had the bump.
And just,
The
to be,
ecosystem
just
had-
to be clear, there's also money in their core grant of 13 point whatever you, that a proportion of that they spend on events.
Yep. That funds the event team that transferred across and
Yes.
some of the business events.
So and that's not quantified in the Christchurch NZ events funding for the lump sum because we haven't been able to quantify it. But there is a team and overheads funding within the 13.9 as well.
Cool. So yeah, it'd be good to get the 22-23 year. Yeah. But yeah, for comparison's sake, yeah, about 800,000 or 900,000 less than the year prior.
Okay. Sam, please.
Yeah, probably just getting a wee bit of info around, because I agree. I mean, this is really useful to see the funding mechanisms, but you're quite right. There's a substantial amount of money that goes to Christchurch NZ every year, sort of in their allocation or their vote. What of that is, they must have an internal budget around event bidding as well, I would assume.
I think it's event staff. It's a staff and the council. When we formed Christchurch NZ, it was formed out of Christchurch City Marketing, CDC Canterbury Development Marketing, and major events team out of Christchurch City Council, and so that funding that went across came from those two, Christchurch Marketing, CDC, and also from Council Major Events Team across to form their core funding.
It would be good to understand from them, though, what portion of that budget actually goes to events. 'Cause that really worries me that we're giving 13 or 14 mil. I had the impression there was a budget within that 13 or 14 mil that was used for
So did
bidding
I.
as well, which makes it even worse if that's not the case.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, it would be, if they've got a budget of 520 grand for event funding a year, it would be most unusual to have an overhead of more than that administering that event funding. It just doesn't quite make
They'll be
sense.
giving advice and support and marketing. It won't only be administering the grant funding.
So to be clear, they have 1.1 million. 600 of it is capital endowment funding, and 500 comes out of the shared grant funding.
Right.
And they also
They have operational.
have operational funding within their base funding.
So here's a wee question for me, because we're ripping the living daylights out of the CEF fund. Should
So
we take
we'll,
that
we'll
off
try and get as much info as we can for you.
Yeah, it would be good just to understand holistically what the events,
their part?
what within their budget actually relates to bidding for events, in terms of the money going out for the bids. And maybe there's nothing. I always had the impression there was, but maybe
It's
I'm
about
wrong.
1.1, I think. Okay, Aaron?
Yeah, so just on the grants to to VO, do they are they still carrying a debt from Jade Stadium / Lancaster Park that they got nursed with when they first set up, that they still got?
Yes. Yes.
No.
No,
And
it was
is
at
that still
States.
there, and is this offsetting that? Yeah, it was a considerable amount. Is that still there?
It looks, looking at their balance sheet, it looks like there is a small amount still there, but a significant amount appeared to have been repaid a couple of years ago. But
It'd be quite good to get just a clear number for transparency for the public on what, because there's all these different ones that VO get, that there's the cost per year is this amount. Just
of VO,
rates money, this amount goes in. Like VO has a massive turnover beyond that because they charge everyone and sell pies and all sorts of stuff. But the amount of rates that go on, it would be really good to just have that slightly clearer, because you've got your management services grant and you've got a capital grant and you've got your
So that's those are all rate fund. Well, the capital's debt funded, but they're all that sum is funded by rates, isn't it?
yes. So that management services grant is a rate funded line.
So we can put a total in that table for future, but it's 7.9 million for year one.
Yeah, and then because what the public don't understand also is then are they hiring any of those premises, or no, they're just looking after those premises. The premises on, do you know what I mean? Like if I go and hire a building to
operate with
run
a
an
mix.
event.
They own some of the assets and they
Yep.
have management services for some. For example, Hagley Oval, they have a management service agreement for the pavilion with the trust, but they own the town hall, for example.
Right, right. It's just, yeah, it's just because I mean, everyone loves events and we can see the price of them and stuff up there. But I've gone to events before in town and counted up the number of people, then worked out the subsidy of the event, and you're standing around and people are at a free event. You're going, okay, you're $260 a head at this free event, and you're kind of going, how valuable is that? If we gave out petrol vouchers for $260, people would get quite excited. So we need to be mindful of that all the time, but they all cost money. They feel good. Everyone loves them, but
Can I just clarify, this is not unusual for events.
Hang on, guys. Hang on. Mary's.
This is not unusual
for
for
libraries, yep, you're right.
Oi.
I was going to say it's not unusual for events companies of councils. So ATED is the same; it received subsidies. So they are not things that operate generally at a profit.
The venues aren't.
Yeah, the venue and events organisations of local authorities or in cities, they are the ones across country are generally subsidised.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like a swimming pool and a library, but there are privately owned swimming pools that don't get council money, and there are venues like Black Barn up in Hawke's Bay, for anyone that's been there, sensational venue.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's council funded.
Moving
So
right
there's a
along.
whole heap of, I mean, okay.
Thank you, Aaron. Victoria.
Thank you. Just picking up on the tail end of Councillor Kewen there, you've referenced Auckland Council. Do all our other councils in New Zealand operate events management companies like we do?
Look, I don't know recent figure. I know it from the past, so I could. Nigel, do you know how many of the councils actually operate?
I think there's some different structures around the country, but it's probably easier to take away and bring back the advice about the way that they've set up, whether they're just managing the facilities or whether they're delivering the events or whether they're doing both.
Yeah, I'm just conscious of the workload at the moment during the long-term plan. It's something that, as a new council, I'd quite keen to understand that at some stage, but maybe not for this conversation.
They all change so rapidly too, so we can get you information at some point.
Yeah, but it's not urgent. The other questions I've got is, I'm aware that VO have got reserves. They've been quite open about that. Have the reserves been factored into here in any way, shape or form, recognising the cost of living crisis that we're in and the trying to get rates down?
I can give part of the answer to that. You may recall, and it was in the consultation document, that VO said that they will be able to fund bid funding for the first 2 years of the LTP out of that reserve.
I think this is very good. There'll be some councillors here that have never seen all the numbers like this, so it's actually very, very clear.
So my third question, my last one, picking up on the conversations from Councillor McDonald and from you, Mary, around the portion of funding going to events for CNZ. You'd mentioned that you haven't been able to quantify in their operational base grant funding how much is applied to events. Have you asked for that information from them?
So you asked, didn't you, Andrew?
Yeah, their initial response is that they would rather not tag how much they put on events, but that the board make decisions based on what's best for Christchurch. So they haven't come back and given us any figures.
Sorry, Andrew. Can we ask them for that? Because they do.
I can ask
to us a
again.
bit.
Yep.
Okay. Alrighty.
Your Worship,
Carry on.
there is a little bit more, but it really is just where what the mayoral, deputy mayoral recommendation was and the staff advice and the submission feedback. So that first slide was to get, and happy to take more questions, but was to try and give a bit of a snapshot of the money that's going into events one way and another. But here you are. So the majority of submitters preferred no further funding for events, and that they many of them saw it as a nice to have when households are under financial pressure. the first mayoral recommendation was additional funding, and again, if I just use the first year, 1.5 million, which had a 0.22% increase. The modified one is 1.2, which has a rate effect of 0.17. And I don't know if anyone wants the rationale explained, but that 300,000 sort of got transferred back to the biodiversity and the environmental partnership fund. It was really a transfer. And staff advice remains as per the draft LTP, no further funding for years 1 to 3. And then pick it up as put out in the draft long-term plan out in financial year 27-28. So happy to take questions.
Tim? Yeah, doesn't happen very often. No. Yanni and then Celeste.
I guess one of the things that
Andre, you had your hand up as well, sorry, earlier on. Yeah, okay.
one of the things I struggle with is there's events that do really well and make lots of money, and we're still being asked to give them contributions. I just don't quite understand like the logic behind some of that stuff. So Black Clash is one where rugby and cricket play, and you know why do we? It can stand on its own 2 feet. It's
Nigel.
Good call. Good call. Yep.
Certainly, as you go through with events, you're bidding against other cities around New Zealand to attract them to the city. So therefore, you need to have a subvention fund or a bidding fund to be able to attract them to the city. And they take into account of how much they make. So the likes of the event you referenced, the Black Clash, we're in competition against other cities to bring them to Christchurch. So we need to bid to attract them.
But, sorry, why do we want that event? Like, what does it do for us as a city compared to how otherwise we could spend that money on something new or city identity?
Yeah, certainly when we go through, so that when we bid for those types of events, we're looking at the return on investment we get. So in terms of what we have for the major events that have been brought to the city, for every dollar that's spent by council on attracting that, there's an $11 spend in the community based on accommodation nights, and that's part of the research they do. So when we're attracting events and choosing which ones a bid for, in terms of the return on investment is one of those considerations.
Okay. Thank you. We had Andre and then Celeste on lunch.
Thank you. Just picking up on the top point, so the public were asked that support further funding for events. What the public weren't asked, they support a cut on the previous year or less events going forward than what we've had in the previous year. If they were asked a different question, you probably would have got quite a different answer. But some of the feedback we've got in submissions as well is we don't necessarily support funding to bid for major events, but we support money going into community events. And you may recall in the hearings I asked, would that have changed your submission? They said, well, yeah, it would have if we knew we were talking about community events as well. So just to be clear on that point, what would be good to understand? Oh, and for example, like we've got a list of events that our current funding would not leave any money left to bid for, and it's commercially sensitive. We can't start naming the events one by one, but if they're put in front of the public, I think they'd be pretty pissed off. It would be good to understand the 1.2, is that to go to venue, CNZ, is it all going to one split amongst others? What was I remember you talking the other day about it.
It's Nigel, tell me. Won't you, Nigel? Please.
Depending on where it came to, we'd work through how that's sat. So in terms of, obviously, the business events have a large return on investment. In terms of so do the community events, and as we work our way through. The other option would be to talk through whether it was divided between Christchurch and Z venues, taking the Christchurch City Council community events. I don't think that had been landed on yet.
Yeah, that was my impression, that it got divided by the 3 people that were in the events ecosystem.
So when you say divided by 3, you mean CNZ, venues, and the Events and Festivals Fund?
No,
Fee-based.
to Nigel, more or less.
So to Nigel, which may go to events, festivals, or may go
Up to
to
him.
city identity type events.
So just to clarify, if it came to the Rec and Sport and events team to decide where that money went, we would talk to each partner as VO and Christchurch and Z, but based on what we'd seen before, we would like to, the recommendation back to the Mayor would be that community events got a third of it, in terms of some of it went to the business events because of the high return on investment, and the remainder went to the major events fund.
It's worked well in the past, and they really know what they're doing.
And that would allow us to complement each event that we're doing, whether it's the community event city identity fund or whether it's in terms of the major event or whether it's the business event, and work as that ecosystem.
Okay, thank you.
Those Yeah, those amounts on each of the 3 years, are we possibly able to get to us what the proposed split would be?
Yeah, just that 4.5. I said that last week. I overread myself a bit there.
Yes, you had that discussion. But of those 3 years, it'd be good to understand what the proposed split would be for those 3 years and what's going where. Because
We'll come back.
yeah, because I would need that before Friday if any amendments are being made. So we need to know what is being proposed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, Celeste, please.
Yeah, my question was the same as Andre's, is around the total split and getting that information. Thanks.
Tim?
Just with that split, could we, isn't that a wee bit fluid? Because I don't know, it's just with the opportunity arising, because in the past, Nigel, if I'm right, if say, whether it's VO or CNZ or whoever, there's an opportunity like Sale GP or something, or the U2 or whatever, if that's isn't it a wee bit fluid?
We'll come back with advice on Thursday.
Okay.
Just one more thing. Just a couple of comments. Events really give a city a culture, irrelevant whether you like, clog dancing or, like heavy metal. It's irrelevant what it is. It is actually important to everybody. And I remember after the earthquake, the first 2 bands we got back in Christchurch, the 9 Inch Nails and Queens of the Stone Age. Now, that was so electric for the young people going there, and it was absolutely kicked out of the park. But there were a lot of people that wouldn't have gone and be asking the question, why the hell are they here? So it's so important that we put our own personal loves aside and look at the culture as a whole.
And that's what that team's good at. Yep. Victoria? And then we're having lunch.
Please dial back a slide. That one. Just at the risk of asking the obvious question, is this 1.2 that's in the revised Mayor's rec additional funding to what we've got in there, and it goes in the events ecosystem line,
It's not this events ecosystem.
which is currently blank?
Yes, it's additional to,
No, it
no,
doesn't.
it's
It wouldn't go. It's not going to Christchurch NZ. Is the
oh,
suggestion?
no, but it's not listed on that table.
No.
No, but it will be going into the events ecosystem funding, and it's additional to the 600K and the 520K, which is on this list.
Nigel's going to come back with options for where it could go.
Yeah, I understand that.
Does
But it's events ecosystem, and it doesn't change any of what's on there for CNZ. That's,
So what you're asking is it on top of the 15 million? Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so righto, we're done. We are now at 10 past 12. So 10 past 1, please. 1:15 sounds because Pauline has trouble reading her watch.